just the frames. Got keys to kingdom, unlocking chains. Sober the podcast, open up your brains. Sober the podcast, let's get it, man. Yeah.
Welcome back to Season 4 of Sober the Podcast with your host, Bradley Saxon, CJ Carlton.
What up?
Steven Sanders.
Yeah.
Let's go. Anyway, we are going to jump right in. Step 3.
Yeah.
Last week, for the listeners that don't know, really like last hour,
Yeah.
we covered Step 2.
Oh, we forgot to change our hoodies and stuff.
Yeah, we didn't change our hoodies.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, we just
Yeah.
happened to be wearing the same one a week later,
yeah,
right?
That's right. Yeah.
Steven's still about to light up.
Steven's
let's
still
go.
about to light up.
right,
Yep,
That's
yep.
up.
But as we continue walking into this journey of the 12 steps, today we're going to talk about Step 3.
Yeah.
Which says, made a decision to turn our will and life over to the care of God
Yeah.
as we understood Him. And, you know, the cool thing about Step 3 is it is also, and we'll get into this, talked about as a stone that we are going to put in place
Yep.
on this archway. If you listen to the last episode, we talked about how the writers of the book wrote you know, this recovery journey as an archway that they were building to pass through a free
Yep.
man or a woman.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Bible says also that if the Lord doesn't build the house, the laborers
Labor in vain.
labor in vain, right?
man.
So
Right. Yep.
we want God to build the house, and the way we do that is we yield to Him through this process.
Yeah.
And we put these stones in place. And the reason why I think it's important to talk about the stones is because you're going to get to a part after the 5th step. You set your hour, and it's going to ask you some questions about stones.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if you're not clear about the cornerstone, the keystone, the foundation stone, you can't really answer
Yep.
those questions moving into Step 6.
Yep.
And if I was honest again, based on my rapid pace through the steps the first time, I just sort of came out of my hour.
Yep.
Answered those questions, yeah. But I don't know that I really at that time understood.
Yeah.
Right.
And so based on that experience, I like to emphasize these because these questions, when you get to, you'll understand.
Yeah.
And you can answer them. Because Step 6 says if you can answer to your satisfaction, then you're at
That's
Step
right.
6.
That's right, yeah.
But like if you don't, you know, I didn't really answer to the satisfaction, but I think I experienced what I needed to get me moving in recovery.
Yep.
But as someone that's a little more seasoned now, I think it's imperative to give people their best chance. And I think understanding the stones that are in place in the first 6 through 3 pages is important. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we've talked about the foundation stone, the cornerstone. Today we're going to talk about 3, which is referred to as the keystone.
Yeah.
Right? And let's just talk about this word decision first. Now, it isn't the most important word in the step, okay? We'll get to that. But let's consider our own experience and maybe somebody else's experience with maybe not really understanding what a decision is.
Yeah. That's right.
Right? Because I never knew what a decision is.
Right.
We live in a time where you make resolutions, New Year resolutions,
Yeah.
that January the 2nd are gone.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so we just need to clarify what a decision is instead of believing that the listener knows it or has made one, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the best analogy I ever heard was about some frogs.
Yeah. I know that one. Yeah.
You've heard this one?
Of course. Yeah.
So it was told to me if there are 3 frogs on a log
Yep.
and 2 decide to jump off, how many are there? Let's give the listener a chance. We know what you said.
Yep. We know exactly what you
You
'cause
said
I
there
said
are
it
one
too.
frog left on the log.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
But there actually is 3. Why? Because a decision isn't a decision unless followed by action.
Yep.
Right.
So you don't know the frogs decided until they jump.
Yeah.
If I decide I'm going to go to college,
Yeah.
I have not gone.
No.
right.
Until you're there and you're
Enrolled.
enrolled and get your books and
Yeah.
get your schedule,
Yeah.
you're not at school.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And so how many times have we done this with God?
Yeah.
yeah.
Come on, somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many times we said, I need God. If you'll get me out of this, I won't do this again. But we never really was willing to submit,
Yeah.
right? And surrender to
Yeah.
His way. It was like, God, I want you to have my drinking and using. I want you to restore me to sanity.
Yeah.
Right? But I don't want to do certain things a different way.
Yeah.
Right? And we may be all like that in the beginning. And still to this day, there's areas of our life that we are doing that he hasn't really shown light on yet.
Yeah.
That eventually he will, right? That isn't always exactly what he is wanting us to do. I've always considered God's will is really not always about doing the right thing.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's a process of eliminating wrong decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can't teach a man to depend upon God by always telling him what he needs to do in every situation.
Yeah.
Right.
You've got to let him eliminate wrong decisions
right.
by making the ones he thinks that God would
Yeah.
have him do.
That's right.
Right? And then let him humbly rely upon
Yes.
that. And then he will learn, even in his bad decisions, God will match calamity to serenity.
Yep.
But he will show him that was not my, that was
wasn't
not
me.
necessarily my
That
handwriting.
wasn't me.
That's so good because we arrive at this decision. An incision is described as something that you cut into.
Yep.
A decision is described as things being cut away from. So in
Yeah.
other words, all of my old options and my old ideas
cut away.
Been cut away, and I'm just left with this same alternative. It's basically what we just talked about in step 2 last week.
yeah.
So I'm sitting there thinking step 3 could be potentially, and I could be wrong, potentially one of the most in-depth steps that we talk about because it's not just a decision. It's also what are we turning over
Yeah,
in
come
this
on.
decision.
Yeah.
And when we decide what we're turning over, what is that?
Yeah.
Right.
Because it has details within what we're turning over, which brings self-awareness, which
Yeah.
we talk about is equally as important as this God discovery journey
right.
we're on too.
Absolutely.
Because over-reliance upon self blocks me from God.
That's right.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of hard to discover God if I don't bring the idea of self-awareness into the picture.
That's right.
So we got to try to focus on this episode on one principle. Because if we start talking about step 3 and all of its antennas on this
Yeah.
one,
Oh yeah. That's-
somebody's going to call us and be like, y'all going to make me pull my hair out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
So let's be honest. A decision is not a decision until you take action.
Yeah.
Correct.
So let me drop this statement in the listener's bucket concerning steps 1, 2, and 3. 2 things. Faith is a course of action that brings about the right outcome. You need to write this down. The word faith, let me simplify it for you. Acting on what you believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we're going to make a decision and take action, what is the most important thing to my faith? The understanding of step 1 and 2.
That's
Right.
right.
Why did we not just start at 3? Because faith is as good as what it's attached to.
Yeah, it's
And so you can make decisions like you probably do every day.
Yep.
It not be attached to truth. It be attached to half truth, which equals no truth, which is why this is the only thing I know you could give half and get nothing.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Man, I'm preaching real good
Yeah,
right now.
Yeah.
Half measures avail us nothing. So we find in step 3, the thing that affords us a good decision is the understanding of steps 1 and 2.
Yep.
Because we must attach a right belief to this action,
Yeah.
to this journey of faith I'm entering, right?
Yeah.
So, man, I'm trying in my mind, like, dude, I've got
Yeah.
got like all these bombs going off in my head.
Need a whiteboard.
And just trying.
Yeah.
We really do
Yeah,
need a
yeah,
whiteboard.
You need a whiteboard.
Yeah, but this is. Wouldn't you agree? This is the time in the book when you get into how it works. Page 60. What's that? 57, 58, 59. Then you get to page 60. And it's the first time in the first 60 pages that the authors decide to give the spiritual problem a name.
That's right.
Yep.
It's really the second part of step 1 or the third part of step 1.
Yeah.
What we're starting
Pretty
to
much.
address.
It's
yeah.
so you don't address. That's so good. We typically at times do, but really the objective of step 1 concerning the prospect that's struggling with alcohol and drugs is the mental obsession.
That's right.
Right. It's the allergy of the body.
Right.
We know that those are symptoms of what we're going to be talking about in step 3, but our objective in step 1 is to create a desperation, a hopelessness in the
Yep.
person to get to a place where in step 2 and 3 they can accept spiritual help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Well, they hinted at it in step 2. We read it last week on the last podcast where it said,
You need to do a 10th step.
do what?
You just lied to them.
I know. I was just kidding.
I'm just
I
kidding.
was just kidding
I'm
around.
just kidding. Yeah, it was last week, guys, for
Right,
sure.
you did that pretty easy too.
Yeah, it was just rolled off the tongue. I think it was twice already. Actually, I did
Yeah,
that.
it was last
They
week.
cancel out then.
Yeah,
if
that's
it was
right.
twice. Yeah,
It may be you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer.
Yeah.
They hinted at it, you know, in step 2.
Yeah.
And I think because I just love the way that the book is laid out, and sometimes I get ahead of myself reading through it.
But I love the word maybe there. Like,
yeah.
I mean,
Maybe.
maybe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I think that they're walking us into this first thing. Yeah, do you identify with the body? Yep, I understand with that. I lose control. I always think I have it. I don't. Then they tell you, well, great, then don't drink. And then they go, but also come to the fellowship. And then they say that's not going to quite be enough though, because you have this second problem. So they close that door on you. Okay, if you have this problem of choice, well, and a whole mind that keeps telling you don't have problem number one, then they walk you on through, and they start to say, well, this may be something that you're going to have God's help with, you know, just
so
a
good.
little bit. But then they wait till we get to the beginning of this next chapter,
Yep.
and they start to say, here's what they're basically saying. Do you have any trouble when you start drinking? Yes, I do. Do you have any trouble remaining stopped once you stop? Yes, I do. Then great. Then you're probably an alcoholic, probably need some spiritual help. But then they go, here's what we mean by spiritual help. Are you having some trouble also in life when you don't drink at all?
Yeah.
Right. And then they start to lay out this actor thing that
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, what we're hinting to is the spiritual.
Yeah.
It's the malady, the problem that arises. It's the problem to where the other issues have stemmed from.
Yep.
Right? It's the thing that is universal to everybody under the sound of my voice.
Yeah.
Why do people watch Sober the podcast and don't struggle with alcohol and drugs? Because the universal problem is the one that we're treating.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right. That's
We're not
good.
treating the illness of the body.
No,
We're
there's-
not treating the allergy. We're not treating this unwhole mind. We're treating the spiritual malady,
Yeah.
which is what everybody has.
That's right.
Not everybody has an allergy of the body, a mental obsession, but they do have a spiritual malady that's
Yeah.
created other strongholds
Yeah.
and desires, appetites, and passions
Yeah.
that they're slaves to
Yeah.
that they'll never break free from unless they get to step 3
That's
and
right.
understanding what needs to be treated, what is that I'm treating,
Yeah.
and how does this, how does this thing that is actually God and good be brought down to size to help me have a quality of life but not be a slave to
That's
it
right.
type
That's
deal.
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is the step that really is the great equalizer for us all
Yeah.
to understand, man, like we have a irritableness, restlessness, and discontentment in our spirit and soul
Yeah.
that we are born with, really.
Right.
I mean, you ever seen a kid come out and all they're doing is crying and
Yep.
wanting? Like, that seems to be the nature that we all have
Yeah.
in different ways.
Yeah.
We're irritable, restless, discontented for the alcoholic addict. We don't find a sense of release until we take a shot of liquor or do drugs.
Yeah.
That's not always the solution for irritable restlessness and discontentment for the listeners.
Yeah.
But they identify not with the once I start, I can't stop.
Yeah.
They don't identify with the I can't stay stopped.
Yeah.
They identify with what he says, how I feel,
Yeah.
the next day in this guilt, shame, and emotions of whatever it was I used
Yeah.
to make that go away, to wake up to find it's still there.
Yeah.
Well, step 3 is really where the Oxford groups and most of the other Christian places would start, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's the only difference. That everything we've covered so far is just what makes us our particular fruit that comes
Yeah.
off of this main problem that
Yeah.
we're getting into today.
But it's not always, step 3 is not so much I need God, it's why I need God.
That's right.
Yeah,
Like we get so caught up in you need Jesus.
I know.
Oh, that's great. I know that.
Yeah.
But there is a why to I need Jesus
Yeah.
that could actually answer some questions that I've had for a long time
Yeah.
before I ever started drinking and using.
That's right.
Yeah, dude.
Like I had these questions and these irritable restlessness and discontentment before I ever picked up a drug. That's why I always say that I felt like drugs kept me from being a teenage suicide
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
I had all the problems
Yeah.
that I'm trying to deal with now before I ever drink and use.
That's right, man.
Well, I like to say it like this, that, and I think many people talk about it in this vein, this spiritual malady is the core of what we struggle with that creates all of these other things, but it's an uncomfortability in my own skin.
That's right.
Sober, like not drinking and using. And when you look around, you separate this being sober, the podcast, whatever your vice is, whatever that thing is that's a stronghold on your life, that it seems like you can't get out of your life, even if you have begun to recognize that you want to get it out of your life, it's because it's treating the spiritual malady. That vice that you've created, or that that stronghold that has been created in your life, is simply still there, and it's so hard for you to break. For me, I'm just talking about me.
Yeah.
So hard to break because it fixes something inside of me.
Yep.
Well, the something that I think or perceive that is fixing in me, which is not fixing anything,
Right. Yep.
which is the illusion.
Yes.
Like the illusion is that it's fixing something. It's not fixing anything. It's delaying it.
It's a Band-Aid.
And the truth is it's pushing me closer to God.
Yes.
And that's what nobody ever wants to talk about.
Yeah.
The thing that I'm using to be okay apart from God is pushing me closer to Him.
That's right.
And so that's what drugs and alcohol did for us. That's what pornography does for
it's so
some.
good.
That's what womanizing does for some. That's whatever that vice is, whatever that treatment center is you've created in your own life to be okay, or to fix this uncomfortability in your own skin. The reason why you understand that it's bondage is because every day you wake up, you got to do it.
Yep.
Well, I think that's why step 3 is clarified by action.
Yes.
Because the decision could have little permanent effect unless
Yeah.
at once followed by strenuous effort
Yeah.
to face and be rid of
Yes.
the things within us that have been blocking us from God.
Yes.
That could help us fix what it is that creates my dependency upon
Yeah.
whatever the thing is that's I'm a slave to,
Yes.
that isn't bringing joy and isn't doing the things that I felt like in the beginning it promised it would do.
Yes.
That's right.
You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? So I think like I'm at step 3, I'm at this turning point, right?
Yeah.
Like how am I at a turning point? Well, I've got this old way of doing things,
Yeah.
but now I have this solution that's been given to me, and I've got this turning point to where either I blot out the consciousness of my intolerable situation as best I know how by
Yes.
just trying to continue to will my way through
Yes.
this based on what I know, or I could accept spiritual help,
Yeah.
Yep.
which is what we begin to get
Yeah.
into in steps 3,
Yes.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So here's the thing. A lot of people think I start with faith. You don't.
No.
Like this is the good news about the course of action. You don't start with faith, you end with faith.
Yeah.
Faithfulness is a fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah.
The fruit is the last thing that hangs on the tree.
Yeah.
We've got to start with getting good ideas rooted in our soul
Yeah.
that can actually produce a breakthrough
Yeah.
and actually start to produce the spiritual realm outside of me that I've afforded God to begin in me.
Yeah.
Well, I actually think I do start with faith, but I start with the faith in knowing that if I continue on being the Lord of my life, that it's going to be disaster.
yeah,
so
for
it's like
sure.
it's really fear that's rooted in a understanding that I have no faith in myself
Yeah.
whatsoever
Well,
anymore.
I think the reason why I say it like that is because I feel like people think they turn their will and life over in step 3.
Right. I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
And
yeah,
I
that's
mean,
that.
I think
Yeah.
people need to understand the most important word in step 3 is to.
Mm-hmm.
Because in an unabridged dictionary, the word to means to begin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, really, I'm making a good beginning in step 3.
Yes.
But I'm not turning. I remember my sponsor saying people like get to step 3 and they go,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
because they think that you're making a beginning to take action in step 4, that somewhere through that process,
Yeah.
you will find as you look back that gradually
Yeah.
over time, something begin to shape,
it.
right?
That's it.
Yep.
But I think we've over spiritualized these first 3 steps in a way that we've never clarified between the one thing that happens and the one thing that has to continue to happen.
Yeah.
I need to get saved. Well, that's one thing, and that will never happen again.
That's right.
But what we're clarifying through this book is that there's a salvation of the soul that has to be done every day through turning my will and
Yep.
life over to God today in step 3
Yeah.
and working these steps through 10, 11, and 12
Yep.
so that I can maintain my spiritual condition.
Yes.
Sozoed. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it's important that we clarify that because we're not talking about doing something that's going to get me to heaven.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? I hope you took care of that when you got reborn.
Yeah.
We're talking about how to get heaven to me in a way that creates different appetites, desires, and passions that actually kill the things that I was a slave to before, right?
That's right.
Right.
Yes.
That I might be whole in my spirit, soul, and body.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so when you grow spiritually through this process, you'll find the things that you were a slave to die because you don't feed them.
Yeah.
Right.
And you change your altitude by changing the way you think because you're being inspired
Yes.
by a higher power, right? And this is changing your life. And it's not obedience
Yeah.
per se. It's the obedience is like this result of taking a new position.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the third step promises says, when we sincerely took
Yes.
such a position,
Yeah.
also. So I'm not trying to teach you that you got to work in the sense of earning.
Yeah.
We're just telling you that you have to work in the sense of effort.
Yeah.
Like grace negates earning, but it doesn't negate effort.
That's right.
And so we're telling you that this process concerning the soul requires you to do
That's
what
right.
you can do.
That's right, man.
Yeah.
Which usually gets you out of the way of what God could do, which
Yeah.
he's been trying to do, but because you're unwilling to stop playing God,
Yeah.
you continue to do what you think is right in your own mind,
That's
only
right.
to lead to destruction.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what
Yeah.
the Bible said.
That's right.
There is a way that seems right to a man, but in the end, it leads to destruction.
Yep.
Well, what is step 4? I'm trying to find the thinking that keeps getting me to destruction,
Yep.
and be willing to throw these lifelong conceptions
Yep.
out the window and adopt some new ones
That's it,
through
man.
action.
That's
Yeah,
it.
dude.
right?
Think about how these two statements sound, and it's just a couple words that make it different. I'm gonna go to college, or I'm gonna go graduate from college. Those two statements are really saying the same thing, but the motive behind both of them is different. The first one says I'm gonna go to college, see how it goes. The second one says
that's
I'm
good,
gonna do whatever I got to do to make sure I graduate
for
from
sure.
college.
That's good.
And so I say that to say this. The first one is in the sense of I'm going to go try to get sober, see what happens. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. The second one says I'm going to go and I'm going to get sober and I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure I graduate. And I don't mean graduate in the sense of you're going to graduate from this, but I'll give that analogy for some of us to understand that willingness is what we're talking about concerning the second statement I made, which is I'm going to graduate from college.
Yep.
There is a fortitude and a resilience that comes from the pain and the desperation
Yeah.
of a drowning man or whatever particular sin that you're up underneath right now concerning your flesh, that you have to get to this mindset in your life that you're going to do whatever it takes to overcome it. And you're not overcoming it by the flesh, you're overcoming it by the Spirit. And so then I got to give the reins back over to the one that can help me, which is God, which is what a lot of this begins to teach me. That like I'm not trying to figure out how to fix this. I can't fix it.
Right.
I ain't never been able to fix none of this. I'm trying to give my will and life over to the one who has already fixed it.
Yeah.
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 Well,
Well,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, man, there's 3 pertinent ideas here on page 60.
Yeah.
That the book lays out, and these things have to be put in place. And I say it often, and I probably shouldn't, but a lot of things that I teach and say, I say it in this vein that the book has these places. I call them stopping places.
Yeah, that's right.
Where it says that like if this isn't understood, there's really no reason for you
move
to go
forward.
further.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people are still going further without the understanding or willingness
Absolutely.
that comes from the understanding. And this is the first pertinent idea out of 3 that the book says on page 60 we must understand. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives.
Step 1.
Step 1. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism.
Step 2.
Right? And then C, that God could and would if he were sought. And then it finally, in the next couple sentences, begins to tell me what my real problem is. So it done kind of set me up, truthfully.
Oh yeah.
Like I've been set up. Like I didn't know what my real problem was. You told me it was drugs and alcohol that got me here. Then you told me that I needed power. Okay, lack of I get all that. But then you start to tell me that like, all right, man, well, this says the first requirement that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success.
Well, that's
Yeah.
the first time they give the spiritual malady its name.
Yes.
And it's self-will.
Yeah.
And that's the booger.
Yeah.
Like,
It's the thing that people finally realize that they have to give up to.
Yep.
yeah.
Everybody
Yep.
can
Yep.
get to a
Yeah.
place
Yep.
to where they're willing to give up the drinking and using.
Yeah.
It's the self-will that they struggle with that leads them back to the
That's
drinking
right.
and
Yeah.
using, you know? And so that's where we get to this step 3 is you talk about all these pages concerning it, define it, because if you don't understand self-will, it's going to be kind of hard to do a searching and moral inventory.
Yeah.
Because most people want to treat step 4 as a dumping ground to
Yeah.
where they talk about all their sins.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's not the objective.
No.
It's to find the spiritual root.
The root
Yeah.
of the trouble,
Yeah.
not the fruit. Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
It's to find the fruit. It's to find the root, but it's hard to really find the root when you don't understand what you're looking for.
Yeah.
You know,
That's it, man.
and I think that's where step 3 comes in to where you have to define self.
Yes, you do. Yeah.
You cannot go into a 4-step and not be able to define self and not know what you're looking for, what it is, what's affected,
Yep.
what's the nature of this
Yep.
of this character defect, what's because the wrongs are the resentment,
Yeah.
the fears, and the harms.
Yep.
Right.
Right. But I'm trying to find the exact nature of the wrongs.
Right.
Yeah.
Resentment is an emotional response, but it shows up with the conflict in the earth. I'm trying to take the people I have conflict with to find out the exact nature of why I'm led by resentment
Yeah.
and find out what instinct is hurt or threatened, which is self,
Right.
Yes.
which is God-given and it's good.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the problem is we were born disconnected from God, left to our own devices to meet these needs,
Yep.
and we've used self-will as a way to try to rearrange life to suit these things
Yes.
Yeah.
that we need, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's the mess we're in,
Yeah.
right? That's the mess we're in. You get to this place where you realize, like, the reason why there is no cure for alcoholism is because there isn't.
Yeah.
The mind, the body, you're not finding any type of scientific
Yeah.
psychological medication to get rid of that. You
Yeah.
will always have it.
Yeah.
What we have found through Alcoholics Anonymous is that if you can fix the spiritual problem, you can live in remission of
Yes.
the mental obsession and the
Yes.
allergy of the body one day at a time.
Yes.
Yep.
And this is just the thing that we've learned that's worked for us.
Yeah.
That if we don't want to drink liquor,
Yeah.
then we have to adopt this spiritual program of action,
Yeah.
and we have to use it. That keeps
Yes.
us from using drugs and alcohol to fix the discontentment.
That's right,
Yeah.
man.
So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about this 4-letter word, self. God given, therefore good.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the 3 basic instincts that make up this word.
Yeah.
Basic instincts, things that you were born with,
Yeah.
things that God put in you that create the
Yep.
quality of life.
Yep.
Yep.
The reason why people work, the reason why people make money,
Yep.
the reason why you got those clothes on. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
The reason why you seek shelter.
Yep.
There's a reason for these things,
Yep.
and it's instinctive things that you've been given
Yep.
that unfortunately without a director,
Yep.
Yep.
you trace every problem you have back to.
That's right.
And so that's why I think it's important because this is the thing that we have to get down to size
Yep.
in order to find peace.
That's
Yeah.
right.
right?
right.
Yes.
And so what are the 3 basic instincts?
Social, security, and sex.
Yep.
Social instinct,
Yep.
the security instinct,
Yep.
and the sexual instinct.
Yep.
And so we have, and these things are also broken down individually
Yep.
with more,
More detail.
way
Yeah.
more detail.
Yeah.
Right? But these are instincts that also come with a reward
Yep.
when met.
Yep.
Yep.
And so we are literally, life is the pursuit
Yep.
of the rewards of these
Yes.
instincts.
Yes.
And why are we selfish? Because we are pursuing to use people, places, and things to get the reward for the instinct because we've believed a lie that is what life is all about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so over time of doing that for so long, you become self-will run
Yes.
riot, even though you don't think so.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's really the disease.
Yeah. That is, man.
That really
it
is the thing that separates me from normal patterns. I mean, don't get me wrong. The allergy and the mental obsession, obviously disease. Centers in my mind, my body. It separates me from normal patterns of help. But if we're really talking about the thing that creates awkwardness in my relationships, that is the reason I keep ending up with the same kind of
Yep.
person over and over
Yep.
again. It's this word self.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's this wheel thinking that I've created that could fix it,
Yep.
or that I could use it
Yes.
to create joy, peace, or whatever
Yeah.
I'm looking for. And this 4-letter word has now become the root of all my problems.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, selfishness, self-centeredness, we think is the root
Yeah.
of our troubles.
Yep.
Right.
Here's how the Bible says it: guard your heart, but guard your heart above everything else, because from it spring the issues of
Yep.
life.
Yep.
What are we learning in step 3? My issues is not stemming from people, places, and things.
Mm-hmm.
My issue is stemming from the condition of my heart.
Yep.
And so now I'm learning in 3 and 4
Yeah.
to win this battle with drugs. It's an inside battle that I have to start with.
Yeah.
And so I'm learning that if I'm going to overcome the self-centeredness, I'm going to need God's help.
That's it, man. Yeah.
Can I say this, that I had trouble with that selfish thing, and I notice other people do too, because I think I thought that when you called me selfish, I meant I was trying to like grab everything I could possibly get
Oh,
and
right.
hoard everything for myself.
Yeah.
And until my sponsor explained to me that we're talking about self-centeredness. First of all, self-centeredness meaning that everything revolves around me, how I feel, how I look, how I think, you think I look, all those things. But he said yours is much worse than that. Like, let's just suppose we have a piece of a nice chocolate pie on the table, right? And he says, and as dinner goes on and dessert goes on, you notice that there's only going to be like one piece left. The polite thing to do is finish your piece before you get that next one. He said, you think selfishness is like hurrying up so you can get that last piece of pie. But I need you to understand that your type of selfishness is much deeper than that, in that you're, whether you realize it or not, calculating who at that table might you let that have that last piece of pie that you might get something from them later on down the road.
absolutely.
Or look generous, or look
Absolutely.
kind, or
Yeah.
look
Yeah.
self-sacrificing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's good, man.
And it's something that we find cannot be reduced without God's help.
No.
Like you can't reduce it much by wishing and
Yeah.
trying on your own power.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
man.
We have to have God's help.
Yep.
And so the process of faith that we're entering is not to remove self. It's to bring it down to its rightful
Right.
place.
That's it.
And bring God back to his rightful
Yes.
place
Yeah.
so that he can meet these deeper things in us.
Yes.
But we still have to use these instincts in order to create life.
Yeah.
Right.
We're supposed to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because here's the truth. When you get well spiritually, you can have right resentment.
Yep.
You can have right fear.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
can have right pride.
Yep.
Right envy.
Yep.
Yeah, those are things that can be corrected when I get better.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
But those are the things that are wrong in my life because I'm not spiritually well.
That's right.
Because I'm looking for people, places, and things to do something they can't. And so I'm not able to ever be content because I'm not seeking the one who gave me the needs to meet them.
That's it.
Right.
man.
So that's the thing about self. It's God given, therefore good, but it's also something that God gave that only God can meet.
That's
can,
right.
Can fix.
Right. That's the goof.
You know, so basic instincts that make up self is social instinct, security instinct, and sexual instinct.
Yep.
Yep.
And these 3 elements make up the word self. And so when we're not well, these instincts get misdirected.
Yep.
And we rely upon these instincts to create a life that we believe, if we get into place,
Yeah.
will bring us utopia.
Yep. Yeah.
That's why the book goes on to say we are like an actor who wants to run the whole show,
Yeah.
forever trying to arrange the ballet, the scenery, and the players in his own way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If I could just get what I think to stay put, all would be well.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
But I just love it because it talks about the root of the problem being self-will. And I love what you said, in a way that we've never envisioned it being.
Yeah.
Right.
I love the fact that we think self-will is mine, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But we're talking about a self-will that manifests in our life as double-mindedness.
Yep.
Yeah.
In a way that in certain cases we are, when it comes to later on, because that's what we do, we're trying to put some things in place for tomorrow too.
That's right.
Yeah.
So in the pursuit of playing God, I can be quite virtuous.
Yeah.
I can be kind, considerate, modest, and self-sacrificing, right?
I'm always going that way first.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the couple of those things are things that are fruits of spirit.
Yeah.
Which means that I can have a replica of a fruit of the spirit just with no power.
That's right.
That's what the Bible means, a form of godliness
Yeah.
without power.
Yep.
So I can produce what looks like godliness all for the wrong reason.
Yep.
That's why
Counterfeit.
that's your extreme example of self-will.
Yep.
Is he not really a self-seeker when in trying to be kind?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to produce what looks like the fruit of the spirit of kindness only for the motive of my heart of what
Yep.
I need you to do that I've planned in my head that can make this happen.
Yeah.
That's going to give this type of utopia.
Yeah.
That's the kind of selfishness we're talking about
Yeah.
that we need to understand, because you can't really see that unless you decide to investigate.
That's
That's
right.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
You've got to investigate, because that's motives.
Yeah.
That's not being able to lie to myself and being honest
That's
with
right.
myself that this was really the reason why I was kind to her. It ain't
right.
because I'm
Yeah.
a kind person. It's because I'm selfish.
Yeah.
And I'm using kindness to get my way.
That's right.
And then when they don't do it,
Yeah.
on the other hand, I'm mean, egotistical, selfish, and
That's
dishonest.
right, man. Yep.
Matter of fact, it gets so fun from here. Like I just think, like I try to tell the guys that I work with from here on out, this is all we're doing. Like this is literally pretty much the rest of it. Like we're just
Yeah.
uncovering, discovering all these places where you're trying to get your needs met through other people. And like, and I just remember early on, like sitting in a meeting, and I think all the Alabaster girls showed up, and I'm doing all this enough to know that there's motives behind everything. And I remember letting my hair down, you know, like in the meeting, and as soon as I did it, I realized like my head, like it's not like the headband hurt or anything, you know. It's like, so I immediately went, which one of these girls is it that I think needs to see these locks or whatever that I got going on here? Like anybody
Yeah.
cares, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I might as well just be like, you know, tossing them around, you know what I mean? And it's so funny because
Look at
now,
this
like, I can't never let my hair down around the guy, because I share that all the time, and I can never let my hair. Every time I let my hair down anywhere, they look at me, they're like, you know, which no, not this time, bro. I'm aware of it now. You know, it's not.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it gets
they not
so
letting it
funny,
go.
man. Like it gets so goofy and so actually really enjoyable just for me to be able to see how not bad I am, but how self-centered, like, and how driven I am by the way you look at me, the way you respond to me, the way, you know what I mean? It's man, it's really, it gets so cool from here.
Well, I think the awareness that you have of these motives and self-will is the thing that affords you the ability to be effective, because the gospel now ain't about others.
Yeah.
You know, we often preach to others more than we preach to ourselves. And I know I'm in trouble when I'm preaching to others more than I preach to myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you right
Yeah.
now that really I need to be preaching to myself more than I ever preach to others, because when I have awareness through doing a 4-step of the ways that I am selfish, like I'm not sent to watch for when selfishness crops up in your life. I'm sent to watch when your selfishness crops up something in me selfish that I use as righteousness to deflect what God's trying to show me,
Yeah,
because what you did was far worse.
Yeah,
dude.
Like that is the thing recovery has afforded me,
Yeah.
that I can be in a situation where I can clearly justify the motive or the thoughts in my heart concerning this situation, because what you're doing is far worse.
Yeah.
But recovery has afforded me not to leave that situation justifying the jealousy or the envy or just the nastiness in my heart that I view you. I have to correct that.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, there's nothing better than that. I can't tell you how many nights I've gone home and thought this is why working with others is so important to me in the beginning, because I go and I can objectively see him better than I can see myself. And I'll go home. I just remember multiple times go home. I just gave this guy some gold, you know, and I just, you know, showed him what was up, and he didn't even see it. It was a whole thing. And I'm smoking a cigarette on my porch, and I immediately realized, like, oh, but you're doing that same. You're just doing it over here. You're just doing it with a different mask.
Yeah.
You just doing, and because I don't know about y'all, but I can always seem to take other people's inventories better than my own.
Yeah.
But there's something about continually doing it for others that you cannot live with sober very long before you have to bring that to the light and share that with somebody else. You know,
But what a gift to be able not to deflect, to not justify, you know, spiritual axiom.
yeah, that's right.
What a principle to live my life by that never affords me the option to justify, rationalize, and deflect situations, but always gives me a reason to know that I am the problem.
Yep.
Yeah,
And that if I'm not, there is no solution.
Right.
And so, I mean, I have been in multiple situations to where I should be fine, and because I didn't really do nothing, but I can't afford to leave without asking myself, like, where am I to blame
Yep.
here?
Right.
Like, even if I don't, there's something that's been so programmed to me that makes me seek that out to make sure that I'm sweeping my side of the street off and that my intimacy with God is still intact,
Yeah.
because I know that is the avenue through which I'm effective and I'm resourceful and I'm taken care of, you know?
Yeah.
And so I just think that when a man lives like that, all the other things that we want to happen come from that place.
Yeah, I do.
That's
Like,
right.
it's not seeking to get that in place to fix what's going on with me.
Yeah.
It's seasons where I'm willing to be okay with the mess around me, and I'm able to use that time to look at the mess in me.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how I uncover and discover the mess in me and correct that, how over time the things around me change.
That's
yeah,
right.
I do.
But it's amazing how when I overlook the mess to change what's around me, nothing ever changes.
That's right. Yep.
It just nothing ever
Never.
changes. Like, I remember being like 60 days in rehab and finally realizing, like, I've never been this content in my life.
Yeah.
And I'm in rehab.
That's
And
right,
I haven't
dude.
seen
Yeah,
my
dude.
kids in months.
Yeah, dude.
And I haven't had a dollar in my pocket.
Yep.
And I'm having to bum cigarettes.
Yeah.
And I'm having to walk to meetings. And yet I've never been this content.
Yeah,
Because
dude.
before I had the drugs, I had the car, my dad
Yep.
paid for the I had everything I didn't have there and was miserable.
Yeah.
And I found in rehab I didn't have any of that, was more content than I ever been, and I just realized because something finally started to begin in me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Find yourself okay in situations that used to be absolutely unacceptable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna take this understanding of self, and we're gonna actually go into step 4, and we're going to inventory our thoughts.
Yeah.
It's pretty much what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're trying to get down to the character defects, which are the ways you think.
Yeah.
And you're going to try to find a way to change the way you think so
Yeah.
you can have control over these emotional responses to life.
Yes.
Right.
When you're under the influence of self-will, which is really what Christians call being influenced by evil spirits, like, you can't control your emotional natures, right? You are a prey to misery and depression. All these symptoms you see on page 52. The thing is that when I change the source of my life and I start to learn to depend and surrender and yield to Him and let Him uproot these way of thinking, when He becomes my director.
Yeah.
Because step 11 says, God direct my thinking.
Yeah.
When He begins to direct my thinking, I outgrow
Yes.
fear. I
Yep.
master resentment. What is
Yep.
that? I have now got the fruit of the spirit of self-control because God
Yep.
is the central fact of my life.
Yep.
And I'm able to respond differently in these adult situations because I'm no longer pitting up emotion.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? Because I'm not dealing with the
Yep.
root of the issue.
Yep.
Now resentment might crop up, but I'm able to pause
Yeah.
when agitated or doubtful, ask God for the right thought or
Yeah.
action, and actually have the ability to change my day
That's it.
through exercising the power God has given me
Yeah.
to correct this thing instead of letting this thing turn into another thing,
That's
turn
right.
into another thing, and 2
That's right.
months later, I'm off the tracks and freaking burned down.
Yep.
Yeah.
And but everything you just said proves the decision. All the action that takes place proves that decision that we make to live by the spiritual axiom. When I talk about self, it really helped me to understand it when I started to hear it like this and then also share it like this. So up in Oconee, there's a nuclear power plant, right?
Yep.
So all the power that we experience, all of us, Duke has a power plant.
Yeah.
And it's and to create that power, they have to have a nuclear reactor, right? It's nuclear. They have to have uranium. They have to have things that you can't get your hands on, and they're
Uranium?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And so for all this stuff to happen, it creates the power that we have even sitting here.
Right.
Did you say uranium or Uranus?
Yeah, uranium. So whenever the power is created, even here where we're sitting, a long way away, we're able to experience that power.
Right.
Well, self is like that nuclear reactor,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
And so the nuclear reactor is a long way away from me right now, but is producing the power that I need here.
Yeah.
Okay? So if the nuclear reactor or the thing that's producing the power is there, then do I need to be sitting here investigating what's going on there, or do I need to be there investigating what's going on there? the trouble is I spent my whole life going around to all the neighborhoods, going around to all the houses,
outlets. Yeah, that's good.
All the house,
Yeah.
everywhere. I'll go everywhere in between me and the place that I know is the actual place
That's
producing
good,
it.
man. Yeah,
I'll go, but once you get me to that fence at the power plant, that's where I've always stopped.
that's good, man.
And that's where the investigation has to take place because that's what's producing the dysfunction in my life. And you know, man, if you're working at a nuclear power plant, you know what I'm talking about because you got to have an eye on it every minute, second, hour, day, every year, every week. Somebody professionally has to be sitting in there making sure it does not implode on itself. Right?
Yeah.
And so, man, like that's how I see myself, man. Like I got to stay there and I got to stay on top of it.
I love that, dude.
I got to be able to investigate it and I got to keep my eye on it because that's what's producing the things that I see on down the road in my life.
I don't know why you just reminded me that I did air conditioning for years, and then I became a service manager, and I had to spot check guys, and I'd call them all the time, and I'd say, well, you know, what are you doing? It's an old unit, maybe we can sell it, whatever. And they would oftentimes they say, well, the fan wasn't working when I got here, and I'd say, sweet, so what'd you do? I changed the fan. Okay, cool. Well,
That's Uranus, uranium.
Yeah. So,
Correct?
well, I mean, you know, but there's so many things in the fan is the last thing that happens. I think that's the same thing you're saying,
Yeah,
right? The
yeah.
fan is the last thing that happens. You're
It's the
pointing out
symptom.
it's a symptom.
It's a symptom.
Okay, call me back when you realize it's the relay. Call me back when you realize it's the circuit board. Call me back when you realize it's just a wire that fell off of the contactor. You know, you're not going back far.
Right.
I love that, man. That's really, really good.
Yeah, man.
But could you please? I done got myself tickled over here. I'm just trying to figure out what uranium is. Could you please help me to find that? Am I saying it right?
Uranium?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I've heard the word.
It's an element, right?
I
Yeah.
thought it was a planet.
No.
That's Uranus.
Oh,
That's Uranus. Uranium is the nuclear stuff that we have to use to create the heat that creates the power.
but it ain't
That's
the
your
source.
crib. No, it's just what creates.
It's
the heat
thing
that
the
they
source
need.
creates.
So it creates the heat that creates the electricity that spins that turbine that creates that power.
There's really a planet called Uranus.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I thought I made that up, bro.
You
Well,
did.
I mean, I did not smoke one
Yeah, you did.
before I got on this
Yes,
podcast.
you did. Boy.
Uranium.
Yes, you did.
Anyway, sorry I had that brain fart during that epic analogy you just gave us. I'm dead serious. You should have seen his face when I said he's like, bro, this is profound. I need you to keep shut up.
It was good. I like that.
Yeah. So really step 3 is about changing sources.
Yes.
That's it. Yeah.
Right? If you're
Yes.
reborn, you've got a new source.
Yeah.
So step 4 is now I've got to turn my attention to it. So when I do that, these other desires will begin to die.
To die,
Yeah.
man.
Right?
Yeah.
Because now that you have a solution,
Yeah, bro.
we got to utilize it.
Yes.
And so the way you utilize it is you turn your thinking, your affections, your attention to it.
Yes.
Like what you give your thoughts to, attention to, gets your affections, your appetites,
Yeah.
and your passions.
That's
Yes.
right.
And so that's really what we're saying. It's a daily war between the flesh and the spirit, right? And the one we feed wins.
Yes.
That's right.
And we're finally learning
Yeah.
that we can overcome the desires of the flesh through this simple process.
Yeah.
And it's very simple. It's clear cut. And in our experience, when taken, brings self down to size.
Yeah.
It works,
Affords
man.
God to be the central fact of my life.
Yeah.
And things start to shake out for us.
Yeah.
It's
It
not
works.
And you know, dude, it's not like a one thing fix.
No,
No.
when continually
It's-
taken.
Yeah, so that's why
Yeah.
they added steps 10, 11, and 12. It's a continued program of action.
Yeah.
Because this self will use your success as a building
Absolutely.
block to reestablish
Yes.
itself.
Yes, it does.
Right? And there's also the thing we don't talk about in AA that we've now matured to know is an evil entity that fights against us.
Yeah.
The enemy, the
Yeah.
devil, flesh, power of
Yes.
sin. These are things that are trying to pull us back to other ways of life.
Yes.
And that's why we are people that can't afford to operate in a retrogressive groove.
That's right.
It spells death for us.
Yeah.
That's right.
We must toe the line.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's why we seem overboard, ecstatic,
Mm-hmm.
because we're trying to realize the importance of growing our spiritual condition.
Yes.
Right? And we do these things because it destructs self-centeredness.
Yeah.
And it affords me a quality of life that's been beyond my imagination.
That's
so
right.
eventually you do it, it's not a duty.
That's right.
It just becomes a working part of our mind, you know? But it all starts in step 3.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think we're going to spend some more time later in episodes talking more about step 3. But I think we've covered a good little bit concerning step 3. The most important decision, too, we're making a beginning. We're not turning our will and life over in step 3, but we're beginning to, and we know we began through action.
Yeah.
What is the action that is required to know? Right in a 4th step, right? Understanding that self is God-given, therefore good.
Yeah.
Made up of 3 basic instincts: sexual, security, and social.
Yep.
And these are things that can be misdirected. That, you know, wanting to be seen favorably in the
That's
light
right.
of people. You know, and we all want to do that.
That's
but
right.
People can't fix that.
Yeah.
Right.
We need God to fix that.
Yeah.
And so learning how to allow God to be in the rightful place to where he can give us those deeper things so that we stop trusting, relying upon people.
Yeah.
You know, and it takes practice.
Yes.
Right? But we need to make a beginning, and that's
Yep.
where step 3 is.
Yep.
We need to take action, and we need to write a 4th step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Which we will get to. I mean, that's all I got. Y'all can think of anything to add before we close this episode out?
Well, dude, I remember when I first met you. We first started riding around in the car together and hanging out. I remember a lot of things that you've told me, but I remember this. Every time you mention it again, I go back to exactly where we were when you said it. You said, dude, my alcoholism does not afford me to live in a retroaggressive groove.
I love that. Yeah.
Like, I don't know why that's always been something that stuck with me, that just was freaking tattooed on the inward part of who I am as a human. But like that statement always gave me the mindset or a different track to walk down that allowed me to know that no matter how far my sobriety takes me, self-will can't help me. And I can't ever get to a place in my life where
I've arrived.
where I have arrived. And every day is a day I must wake up and carry God's vision and will into all my activities and affairs. And every day is a day I must choose forgiveness. Every day is a day I must try to find a way to have health in my personal relationships. Every day is a day I got to find gratitude and gratefulness. And that this is the not living in a retroaggressive groove.
That's right.
Like, I'm doing these things on purpose. Not because somebody made me, not because somebody told me to, but because the promises came true for me.
It also states that you do it regardless of how you feel.
That's it.
Regardless of if you want to.
Yes.
Like if I base what I did on how I felt and wanted to,
Wouldn't nothing get done.
no, and I would be drunk and high.
Yeah.
But isn't that the same thing? Look at what you both just said. Like I could never afford to be in a retroaggressive groove when I was in my addiction. I always had to have I could never get high on yesterday's
That's it,
bag,
man.
right?
Yeah.
And I had to do it regardless
That's
of how
it.
I felt.
Yep. That's it, dude.
All right, well, let's end it with this. Shout out to Bob, Dr. Bob. He says something.
Yeah, it's my favorite quote.
He says something pretty brilliant in here that I think I've gave so many talks in AA, right? Mm-hmm. And I've ended
Me too. Every time. That's crazy.
I've ended hundreds of them
Yep.
with this one
Me
paragraph.
too. That's hilarious.
If you think you're an atheist, an agnostic, a skeptic, or have any other form of intellectual pride which keeps you from accepting what's in this book, I feel sorry for you. If you still think you are strong enough to beat the game alone, that is your affair. But if you really and truly want to quit drinking liquor for good and all, and sincerely feel that you must have some help, we know that we have an answer for it. Here it is. It never fails. If you go about it with 1/2 the zeal you have been in the habit of showing when you are getting another drink or drug, your Heavenly Father will never let you down.
That's right.
That's good.
Bob,
Yep.
R.I.P., baby. Till next time.
Peace.
Shoo!